Welcome back. Today, I'm still working in the book of Ezekiel. We're continuing with, now we're up to chapter 16, verse 1. First of all, though, I'm going to ask everybody out there, and the ones here too, I ask for your prayers. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and in the last month or so, my blood sugar averages are just considered out of sight, because I'm running at about 348 points. Give you an idea, anything above 120 is considered bad enough. And as a result of that, I'm experiencing what is called neuropathy, pain in my feet in particular. And in this case, it's my little toe on my left foot. It is giving me tremendous pain. I mean, you'll see me shifting back and forth and trying to find a position, because right now it is hurting. I mean, just as bad as you can get. And then the other option of it is having problems, urinary problems, of being able to do what it needs to do. Okay? And so, you know, this old body is breaking down, slowly by minute. And only Yahweh can make any changes in that and to get it to work. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up having to go back on to medication. And I don't want to do that, because the medication gives me what I call brain fog. I have a hard time thinking of what's going on, or to even understand when you're talking to me. I'm also hard of hearing, and it's getting more I guess, pronounced when I'm looking at somebody. See, I wind up almost reading your lips. With this thing with COVID, I can't go any place and ask for something, because they got that mask on. I can't hear a word they say. And so, you know, that's the things you run into. I can be thankful that I have reached 74, and in another couple of months I'll be reaching 75, hopefully. But you know, it is hard in this day and age, and especially to stay out of the hospital, because since I am not COVID vaxxed, nor do I have COVID that I'm aware of, but not having the vax. If I go and they want to do treatment in the hospital, today they require that you be vaxxed before they'll treat you. I really find that, you know, they said, what about this Hippocratic oath? It seemed to have disappeared with COVID. Like I said, going into the book of Ezekiel, we've gone through the first 15 chapters. We're now up to chapter 16. Yes?
My mother was not vaxxed, and they treated her.
Well, it depends on, I'm just reading what I see on the news across.
They asked us, and I told her she's not taking the vaccine, and we're not going to either. But still, they treat her.
Okay. Well, that was good. There are a few exceptions, but for a lot of these corporate hospitals, there is no exception. Takes me to another thing. Are you aware that most of your doctor's offices are corporate offices? They do not belong to the doctor. A corporation tells him what he can and cannot treat, how he can or cannot treat people. And it tells him what medications he must treat with. I didn't realize that. I always thought these guys, you know, gone to medical school and then went out there and set up their own business. No, they didn't set up a business. They set up a corporation, which is tied to other corporations, which is tied to the pharmaceuticals. So consider that in your life. Okay, going to Ezekiel 16:1. Again, Yahweh's word came to me saying, came to Ezekiel, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abomination. See, this is one of the interesting things, is a lot of people don't understand, or I guess you could say, equate the fact of what was going on within the nation of Israel and how much they were doing abominations before Yahweh, the face of Yahweh, to realize that Yahweh is now going to extort, or I should say, not extort the word, I know what problem. I have a dental appliance I have to take out, and I forgot to take it out. But otherwise, I lisp and whisp. So, Jerusalem, he's telling Ezekiel, he said, cause or tell Jerusalem to know her abomination, and say, thus says Adonai Yahweh to Jerusalem, your origin and your birth is of the land of the Canaanite, and Amorite was your father, and your mother was a Hittite. Now, can anyone give me an idea as to why he's identifying Israel's mother and father as being a Amorite or a Hittite? Yes, Curtis.
Didn't Esau marry Hittite women and they displeased his parents highly? They didn't like them?
No. This is not what it's talking about. It says your mother.
Your mother.
Okay, Daniel.
Does Abraham come out of that area?
Abraham came out of the area of the Amorites, and trying to think now. Now I've gone off. He's talking about where they came from, the area they came from. The mother came from an area that was Hittite. And we're talking about
Modern Turkey.
well, we're talking not basically Iran.
Or Iran. Turkey and Iran.
Well, Abraham, his group came in.
From right? They came out of
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is who came out. It was
the Chaldees.
Isaac's wife, Rebecca. She came out of the area of the Hittites. It says here, verse 4, as for your birth, in the day you were born, your navel was not cut. You weren't washed in water to cleanse you. You weren't salted at all, nor swaddled at all. Now this is almost a discussion about the nation using terminology that they understood. A lot of this is not absolute direct. The Clark's commentary says, as for your nativity, this verse refers to what is ordinarily done for every infant on its birth. The umbilical cord by which he received all his nourishment while in the womb, being no longer necessary, it is cut at a certain distance from the abdomen. On this part, a knot is tied, which firmly uniting the sides of the tubes, so that they don't bleed back from the child. They coalesce and incarnate together. The extra part of the cord on the outside of the ligature, being cut off from the circulation by which it was originally fed, soon drops off. And the part where the ligature was called the navel. Well, that's what happens with every child. That umbilical cord, when it falls off naturally because it's no longer receiving any nutrient, it dies and comes loose. In many places, when this was done, the infant was plunged into cold water, in all cases washed, and sometimes with a mixture of salt and water, in order to give a greater firmness to the skin and constrict the pores. The last process was swathing the body to support mechanically the tender muscles till they should acquire sufficient strength to support the body, because basically they tighten them, swaddle them, so that they don't thrash about. But among savages, this latter process is either wholly neglected or done very slightly, and the less it is done, the better for the infant, as this kind of unnatural compression greatly impedes circulation of the blood, the pulsation of the heart, and the due inflating of the lungs, respiration, and in many cases being rendered oppressive by the tightness of these bandages. Going back to Ezekiel 16:5. No eye pitied you to do any of these things to you, to have compassion on you. But you were cast out in the open field because you were abhorred in the day that you were born. He's referring here something that the, I guess you could say the barbarous or the heathen nations did. Clark puts here, you were cast out in the open field. This is an allusion to the custom of some heathen and barbarous nations who exposed those children in the open fields to be devoured by wild beasts who had any kind of deformity or whom they could not support. But you think about it. Put them out there. It's interesting that in the modern world, they kill the unborn before, at, or after birth. I guess they consider it to be more civilized than feeding the child to wild animals. You know, it's interesting what Yahweh looks at, because that was still murder. Either way, it was still murder. Ezekiel 16:6, when I passed by you and saw you wallowing in your blood, and I said to you, though you are in your blood, live. Lest I said to you, though you are in your blood, live. Because what each time you, I guess you say, analyze this as his impression of Israel and what he has done for Israel. Go into Ephesians 2:4. But the Father, being rich in mercy, for his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead through our trespasses, all the sins we committed was guaranteeing our death, made us alive together with the Anointed One. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up with him, and made us to sit with him in the heavenly places in the Anointed One, Yeshua, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and kindness toward us in the Anointed One, Yeshua. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself, it is the gift of the Father, not of works, that no one should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in the Anointed One, Yeshua, for good works, which the Father prepared before that we would walk in them. He goes on to Ezekiel 16:7. I caused you to multiply as that which grows in the field, and you increased and grew great, and you attained an excellent ornament. Your breasts were formed, and your hair grew, yet you were naked and bare. As Gil points out in his commentary, Jacob went down to Egypt with 75 persons only. But when his posterity returned or left Egypt, they were above 600,000 that were able to go forth to war. If you want to verify this, about him going down in the 75 is Genesis 46:27. And for the, how many that came out of Egypt after the Passover was in Exodus 1:7. Ezekiel 16:8. Now when I passed by you, and I looked on you, behold, your time was the time of love, and I spread my skirt over you, and covered your nakedness. Yes, I swore to you, and entered into a covenant with you, says Adonai Yahweh, and you became mine. Genesis 15:13. He said to Abram, know for sure that your offspring will live as foreigners in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them. They will afflict them 400 years. Yahweh espouses Israel to him. A spousal occurs before marriage. We call it an engagement. Ruth 3:9. He said, who are you? He's talking about, I can't think his name. She answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Therefore spread the corner of your garment over your servant, for you are a near kinsman. In other words, she's actually making a proposal to one of her near kinsmen. Yeah, Boaz. She had been instructed by her mother-in-law on what to do, but she is not an Israelite. She had been married to Israelites, and at this point, according to the law of Yahweh, the only other person that has a responsibility for her is the next nearest male kinsman. Boaz was not the next, there was one in between. So they had to have a formal breaking of that engagement by meeting him before the elders at the gate of the city and making the proposal to him, and when he turned it down, she threw a shoe at him. And At that point, Boaz became the eligible. Ezekiel 16:9. Then I washed you with water. Yes, I thoroughly washed away your blood from you, and I anointed you with oil. Gill says refers to 2 Corinthians 1:21. Now he who establishes us with you in the anointed one and anointed us is the Father, who also sealed us and gave us the down payment of the Spirit in our hearts. Ezekiel 16:10. I clothed you also with embroidered work and put sealskin shoes on you. I dressed you with fine linen and covered you with silk. And where did we get that from? What happened on the day that they left Egypt? Exodus 12:35. The children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they asked of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and clothing. Colossians 3:12. Put on therefore as the Father's chosen ones, holy and beloved, a heart of compassion, kindness, lowliness, humility, and perseverance. Ezekiel 16:11. I decked you with ornaments, put bracelets on your hands and a chain on your neck. I put a ring in your nose. Boy, that would really get a lot of people, a lot of women today, who put a ring through the nose, and earrings in your ears. All that was identifying the fact that she was engaged or married. It was identifying so that nobody had to ask her. It was an automatic, known that if you run across a woman who had the nose ring, she had a husband or a future husband in the wings, and you were not to get anywhere near her. And a beautiful crown on your head. Verse 13, thus you were decked with gold and silver. Your clothing was of fine linen, silk, and embroidered work. You ate fine flour, honey, and oil. You were exceedingly beautiful, and you prospered to royal estate. Verse 14, your renown went out among the nations for your beauty. It was perfect. Through my majesty, which I had put on you, said Adonai Yahweh. This beauty is actually the blessings that Yahweh gave them. Verse 15, but you trusted in your beauty and played the prostitute because of your renown, your people knowing you, and poured out your prostitution on everyone who passed by. It was his. It was Yahweh's. So she was now prostituted. She is now prostituted. Gil says, but thou distrust in your own beauty, as the Judeans did in external gifts bestowed upon them, in their outward prosperity and grandeur, in their riches, wealth, wisdom, and in the extent of their dominions, as in the days of David and Solomon. And in such things men were apt to put their trust and confidence, and to be elated and grow proud and haughty as a woman because of her beauty. So some professors of religion trust in the form and profession of it, in speculative knowledge, and in outward duties and services, being unconcerned for inward purity and holiness, not trusting in the righteousness of the Anointed One, the real beauty of saints. And played the harlot because of your known, being so well known to everybody, or named, which the Judeans got among the nations around about them, for their wisdom, riches, and power, which was a snare unto them as a woman's beauty is to her, and they were admired and courted and complimented by their neighbors, and so drawn into idolatrous practices, as women into fornication and adultery by the admirers of her. Idolatry, which is here meant, is frequently signified by playing the harlot, or by fornication and adultery, or you played the harlot in my name, in your name, alluding to the customs of harlots. And here's the other interesting thing here. It says, custom harlots, notorious, infamous ones who used to set their names over the apartment, over the door. When I was much younger, it was called a red light. Alluding to direct men into them, and so it made you note how famous and notorious the Judeans were in their idolatries, and how imputed in them. The religious writer Jarsi interprets this of the calf of the wilderness and other idolatries which the tribe of Dan committed there. But in other respects, the idolatries committed from the times of Solomon to the captivity, which were many and often repeated. And though sometimes a stop was put to them by pious princes, yet broke out again. So trusting in a man's own righteousness or in any outward thing is idolatry. So trusting in a man's own righteousness or in any outward thing is idolatry, and also false worship and superstitious observance. And he talks about it, says, and pours out thy fornication on everyone that passes by, which expresses the multitude of their idolatries, the measure of them, which ran over, the fondness they had for every idol of their neighbors. I mean, any new idol, they were ready to accept them. Like a common strumpet that prostitutes herself to everyone, not only to the men of her own place and city, but to all strangers and travelers. So the Judeans, not content with the idols they had, embraced all that offered, or their neighbors could furnish them with. I mean, almost going about looking for somebody new to his it was, to him it was, or her desire, her lust, her fornication, everyone that passed by it might enjoy her. So the Judeans were ready to fall in with every idol and every idolatrous practice. The Targum renders this clause, and it is not right for you to do so, to commit and multiply idolatry. Today, we see many. Do we see any similarities in this world or this nation? Look at all the ones that are chasing down stuff for Ukraine to gain their blessing. They're giving them, well, actually, we are now $30 trillion in debt that we didn't have a little over a year ago. I mean, things we're trying to buy off. We're making treaties with the various nations. Okay, come on. Ezekiel 16:16. You took some of your garments and made for yourselves high places decked with various colors and played the prostitute on them. This shall not happen, neither shall it be. That's what he's telling them of what they were doing. Proverbs 7:16. I have spread my couch with carpets of tapestry, with striped cloths of the yarn of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's take our fill of loving until the morning. Let's solace ourselves with loving. For my husband isn't at home. He is gone on a long journey. It was all the things that Israel was doing, either individually or as a nation. Ezekiel 16:17. You took also your beautiful pearl of jewels of gold and of silver, which I had given you, and made for yourself images of men, and played the prostitute with them. Images of men, idols. They made their own idols, and then they used them in their prostitution. Deal said, thou hast taken thy fair jewels of gold and of my silver, which I have given you, or thy precious vessels of gold and silver, meaning either the vessels of gold and silver in the temple, as your own things, which they converted to idolatrous uses, or rather their own household vessels of gold and silver, which the Father had given them as the bounties of his providence, and he still had a right unto, in which they used to dishonor his name, which argued great ingratitude in them. With all the blessings that they got from Yahweh, they were using them to prostitute themselves to all of the other idolatrous idols. Ezekiel 16:18. You took your embroidered garments, covered them, and set my oil and my incense before them. You took your embroidered garments, covered them. In other words, you dressed the idol. And then you added to that my oil and my incense before them. My bread also, which I gave you, fine flour, oil, and honey, with which I fed you. You even set it before them for a pleasant aroma, and so it was, says Adonai Yahweh. So it was taking things that Yahweh had given them through the blessings of increase, produce, everything that they were getting, and used it to worship these other idols, saying, well, You're Yahweh. You're the one that gave this to me when they did. Hosea chapter 2, verse 8 also talks along this same subject. For she didn't know that I gave her the grain, the new wine, and the oil, and multiplied to her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. Therefore I will take back my grain in its time, and my new wine in its season, and will pluck away my wool and my flax, which should have covered her nakedness. Now I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one will deliver her out of my hand. I will also cause all her celebrations to cease, her feast, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn assemblies. All of these that they carried is a copy of what Yahweh required. Verse 12, I will lay waste their vines and her fig trees, about which she has said, these are my wages that my lovers have given me, and I will make them a forest, and the animals of the field shall eat them. I will visit on her the days of the Baals, to which she burned incense, when she decked herself with her earrings and her jewels, and went after her lovers, and forgot me, says Yahweh. Going back to Ezekiel 16, verse 20. Moreover, you have taken your sons and your daughters, whom you have borne to me, and you have sacrificed these to them to be devoured. Was your prostitution a small matter? I mean, really? You didn't stop there. Now you're sacrificing your kids. And this is in a nation that supposedly worship Yahweh. You know, and you look around us today, this is a nation who claims to worship Yahweh. There are nations in Europe that also claim to worship Yahweh. Even in Ukraine, they claim to worship Yahweh, but do not. The world is upside down from what it should be. Verse 21, Ezekiel 16, that you have slain my children and delivered them up, and causing them to pass through the fire to them. Well, that can also be referenced as, what is war? It's battle and it's fire. The weapons of war, the explosions, everything. The maiming, the killing is done. A rifle is a form of making them pass through the fire, because it fires a bullet. It kills them because they're there to support Zelensky or whoever else is, that they send them out to support, whether they support those in the Middle East or whatever. Verse 22, in all your abominations and your prostitution, you have not remembered the days of your youth, when you were naked and bare and were wallowing in your blood. It has happened all after all of your wickedness. Woe, woe to you, says Adonai Yahweh. And you have built for yourselves a vaulted place. It's talking about their temples, their houses of prostitution. You have made yourselves a lofty place in every street. Of Jerusalem and other cities, this is a deal, it was usual to erect high places in the streets, where altars were built and idols set up to be worshipped. It denotes the public manner in which they committed idolatry and the multitude of their idols, which shows their impotence and hardness of heart. I mean, these took precedence over what Yahweh wanted. Verse 25, you have built your lofty place at the head of every way, and you have made your beauty an abomination, and have opened your feet to everyone who passes by, and multiplied your prostitution. Has opened your feet to everyone that passes by. A euphemism. We got all kinds of euphemisms in this world, signifying the exposing to view of the privates or secret parts of the female, in order to lure to impure embraces. And the meaning is that the Judeans were ready to receive any idol and give into any idolatrous worship that offered to them, and even courted and solicited the Gentiles to join with them in all idolatrous practices. Verse 26, you have also committed sexual immorality with the Egyptians. Now he's going specific. Your neighbors, great of flesh, and have multiplied your prostitution to provoke me to anger. By entering into leagues, this is what Gil says, and alliances with them, and seeking to them for help and assistance against their enemies, instead of seeking Yahweh, from those from whose bondage they were formerly been delivered, going back to your former slave masters to ask for their help, from whose bondage they had formerly been delivered, and whose society they were cautioned against, yet they forsook Yahweh, and joined themselves to them by solemn covenant, and not only so, but fell into the worship of their idols, who were a people of all others the most superstitious, and given to idolatry. And many of their idolatrous rites and ceremonies were received and retained by the Judeans as the worshiping of Tammuz and other idols. Ezekiel 16:27. See, therefore, I have stretched out my hand over you, and have diminished your portion, and delivered you to the will of those who hate you, the daughters of the Philistines, who are ashamed of your lewd way. Yeah, they want to bring them all these laws, but they don't. One of them pointed out, they were willing to accept the Egyptians' idols, but the Egyptians were not willing to accept the Judeans' idols. They considered that to be prostitution, going against their gods. Gil says, makes a correlation here with Matthew 11, verse 21. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works that had been done in Tyre and Sidon, which were done in you, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon on the day of judgment than for you. You, Capernaum, who are exalted to heaven, you will go down to Hades, or the grave. For if the mighty works have been done in Sodom, which were done in you, it would have remained until today. But I tell you that it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment than for you. He's just comparing what all they've done in their lives and all the things the ones around them have done. It has brought them to this situation, because this is written with the Judeans in captivity. Yahweh already sent them into captivity. So, I mean, it's not like he's telling them ahead of time. He's now telling them behind why they're there. Ezekiel 16:28. You have played the prostitute also with the Assyrians, because you were insatiable. Yes, you have played the prostitute with them, and yet you weren't satisfied. And as Gil says, by entering into alliances with them and worshiping their idols. Verse 29 of Ezekiel 16. You have moreover multiplied your prostitution to the land of merchants, to Chaldea, and yet you weren't satisfied with this. As Gil says, and you have multiplied your idols, that you might be joined to the people of Canaan. In other words, they were accepting their idol in order as a covenant bond between the two. Ezekiel 16:30. How weak is your heart, says Adonai Yahweh. You know, makes you wonder. When you ask a question like that, is what's about to happen? Since you do all these things in the work of an impudent prostitute. Verse 31. In that you build your appointed place at the head of every way, and make your lofty place in every street, and have not been as a prostitute in that you scorn pay. These are all the brothels that they had set up. Verse 32, a wife who commits adultery, who takes strangers instead of her husband. People give gifts to all prostitutes, but you give your gifts to all your lovers, and bribe them, that they may come to you on every side for your prostitution. They don't just come in just like, they want to. She's having to actually bribe them to come to her, instead of them bribing her to come to them. You are different from other women in your prostitution, in that no one follows you to play the prostitute. Whereas you give hire, and no hire is given to you. Meaning, well, Israel played these other countries or paid these other countries to prostitute themselves to Israel, there was no hire, or they were not being paid to do the same. Therefore, you are different. Therefore, prostitute. Hear Yahweh's word. Thus says Adonai Yahweh, because your filthiness was poured out, and your nakedness uncovered through your prostitution with your lovers, and because of all the idols of your abomination, and for the blood of your children that you gave to them. Therefore, see, I will gather all your lovers with whom you have taken pleasure, and all those you have loved, and all those you have hated. I will even gather them against you on every side, and will uncover your nakedness to them, that they may see all your nakedness. Ezekiel says, behold, therefore I will gather all thy lovers, and with whom you have taken pleasure, or with whom you have mixed in unlawful embraces, joined in some sinful alliances, or in idolatrous practice. And all of them thou hast loved, the Egyptian, Syrian, whose friendship and idolatrous customs they were fond of, with all of them that thou hast hated, as the Philistines, Moabites, Ammonites. I will even gather them round about against you, as they were in the Chaldean army, which considered many nations. It was the Chaldean army that took Israel into the first can't think of the word for where they went, captivity. Ezekiel 16:38, I will judge you as women who break wedlock and shed blood are judged, and I will bring on you the blood of wrath and jealousy. Leviticus 20 verse 10, the man who commits adultery with another man's wife, even who commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall be surely put to death. That was what the law was. Ezekiel 16:39, I will also give you into their hand, and will throw down your vaulted place, and break down your lofty places. They will strip you of your clothes, and take your beautiful jewels. They will leave you naked and bare. The city of Jerusalem, the temple and altars, and not only these, but even the high places and altars which were set up for altars' uses, all should be destroyed by the Chaldean army. The Targum is, and they shall destroy your walls, and your high places shall be destroyed. Ezekiel 16:40, they will also bring up a company against you, and they will stone you with stones and thrust you through with their swords. Deuteronomy 22:24, then you shall bring them both, those that have committed adultery, to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The lady, because she didn't cry, being in the city, and the man, because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. So you shall remove the evil from among you. Because all of this prostitution is evil, because it's not only the fact of the act of prostitution in the marriage, but also the fact of prostitution of turning away from Yahweh and prostituting themselves to these idols. Ezekiel 16:41. They will burn your houses with fire and execute judgments on you in the sight of many women. I will cause you to cease from playing the prostitute, and you will also give no hire anymore. As the houses in Jerusalem were by Nebuchadnezzar's army, were burned with fire. Even the temple, the house of Yahweh, and the king's house, and the houses of great men, even all the houses in the city. That's found in Jeremiah 52:13. And as was commanded to be done to idolatrous city, Deuteronomy 13:16. And this also may be said in allusion to the burning of adulterous persons, Genesis 38:24. Because that was what Judah was going to do to tomorrow, that she was found to be pregnant, was to burn her. Ezekiel 16:42, so I will cause my wrath toward you to rest, and my jealousy will depart from you. I will be quiet and will not be angry anymore. When the Judeans should cease from their idolatries and no more worship the gods of the nations, then the fury of Yahweh and the effects of it should cease. Elohim no longer contends with people while they are sinning. When a reformation is brought about by afflictions or judgments, this end is answered. His end is answered. And he puts a stop to the spread of his wrath and fury, or if it is made to rest, because there is nothing left for it to work upon, a total consumption of people and substance having been made. Verse 43 of Ezekiel 16, because you have not remembered the days of your youth, but have raged against me in all these things. Therefore, behold, I also will bring your way on your head, says Adonai Yahweh, and you shall not commit this lewdness with all your abomination. You know, it's like as parents learn with teenagers, they tend to not want to follow what the parents say to do. If you try to talk them into doing the right thing, they will do the wrong thing. If you try to talk them out of doing something that's wrong, they will do it either way. Ezekiel 16:44, behold, everyone who uses proverbs will use this proverb against you, saying, as is the mother, so is her daughter. The Judeans were the successors of the old Canaanites, and they imitated them in their practices. And because both of their succession and imitation, they are called the daughter of them, a bad daughter of a bad mother. But also, you know, in Revelation, it talks about in religion, the daughters of Babylon. Verse 45 of Ezekiel 16, you are the daughter of your mother, who loathes her husband and her children, and you are the sister of your sisters, who loathe their husbands and their children. Your mother was a Hittite, and your father an Amorite. Your elder sister is Samaria, who dwells at your left hand, and she and her daughters, and your younger sister who dwells at your right hand is Sodom with her daughters. Give an example of what she meant by the daughters. Yet you have not walked in their ways nor done their abomination, but soon you were more corrupt than they in all your ways. As I live, says Adonai Yahweh. Sodom, your sister, has not done, nor her daughters, as you have done, you and your daughters. Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, plenty, and prosperous ease is in her and in her daughters. She also didn't strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. They were arrogant and committed abomination before me. Therefore, I took them away when I saw it. Samaria hasn't committed half of your sins, but you have multiplied your abominations more than they, and have justified your sisters by all your abominations which you have done. You also bear your own shame yourself, in that you have given judgment for your sisters through your sins, that you have committed more abominable than they. They are more righteous than you. Yes, be also confounded and bear your shame, in that you have justified your sisters. I will reverse their captivity, and the captivity of Sodom, her daughters, and the captivity of Samaria and her daughters, and the captivity of your captives among them, that you may bear your own shame, and may be ashamed because of all that you have done, and that you are a comfort to them. Your sisters and Sodom and her daughters will return to their former estate. They'll rise back up to their original riches. And Samaria and her daughters will return to their former estate, all the back of the head. And you and your daughters will return to your former estate. For your sister Sodom has not mentioned by your mouth in the day of your pride. Before your wickedness was uncovered, as at the time of the reproach of the daughters of Syria, and of all who are around her, the daughters of the Philistines, who despise you all around. You have borne your lewdness and your abominations, says Yahweh. You're the one guilty of what you have done. You have to think about it. When sin is committed, the sinner is the one responsible, because they took their eye off the ball. Ezekiel 16:59. This talks about Yahweh's everlasting covenant. For thus says Adonai Yahweh, I will also deal with you as I have done, who have despised the oath in breaking the covenant. Nevertheless, I will remember my covenant with you in the day of your youth, and I will establish to you an everlasting covenant. Then you will remember your ways and be ashamed. When you receive your sisters, your elder sisters, and your younger, and I will give them to you for daughters, but not by your covenant. I will establish my covenant with you. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. That you may remember and be confounded, and never open your mouth anymore because of your shame, when I have forgiven you all that you have done, says Adonai Yahweh. He's still willing to forgive. After all of this, he's still willing to forgive. I will return in 2 weeks on the second Sabbath, August the 13th at 3 p.m. Hallelujah, praise Yahweh. Hallelujah, Yahshua.